Welcome to another episode of the South Texas Power Lunch. I'm Matt Duke, managing attorney of the South Texas Business Lawyers. Today's episode is Eli Plainer, and Eli is a firefighter, but we're going to talk about his ventures right now with licensing a Cryofit and his startup with his partners of Parlay, which is a platform that can help you with sports betting, stock market investing, and some other aspects that they're developing. And in this episode, you're really going to get to learn about the side hustle, because as Eli tells you during this interview, he's been always doing the side hustles and he's progressed in those hustles and to becoming, the franchises and this startup based upon his experience. And I think it's a great example of the journey that all companies will take and all entrepreneurs will take. So we'll go ahead and jump in now as I talk with Eli Plainer about all of the great things that he's working on. Eli, thanks so much for coming here to talk with us today. I'm excited to talk because you have a wide variety of things that you do as an entrepreneur and as a person. Let's start off with you as the firefighter businessman, which is probably now what I'm going to call this episode is the firefighter businessman. Give us a little bit about you and your journey just into serving the community as a firefighter and then getting into business. Give us a little bit of background on that.
Yeah. First, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
And I think I started this because I've always had like a knack for hustle. And I dropped out of high school at a young age. I dropped out when I was 16 and I just worked. And as I got older, I realized like it's not easy to make money with dead-end jobs and work in construction. And I had a son at a young age, and I started realizing that I wanted to make sure that I had something for him to look up to. And so that's kind of where my fire service started, and went to fire academy when I was 23 and just kind of really caught on the fact that all firefighters work like multiple jobs. And so it's kind of perfect because our schedule is 24 hours on, 48 hours off, and everybody kind of does side hustles. And so, I kind of fell into the entrepreneur end of things maybe 5-6 years into my career as I started to transition from like emergency health to like progressive, restorative, regenerative health. And that's kind of how I got started in a sense.
So, we talk about this when we've got clients that have, side hustles, and we've even talked about this on the show that we've had. We've had a lot of people that talk about, they started off as a side hustle and, some of these morph at some point in time to be the hustle. Which I know you're still serving the community. So thank you for what you do for the community in your role as a firefighter. But so also full disclosure here. So Eli and I, the way I met Eli actually is because I go to Cryofit, which we're going to get to here, maybe right now, maybe before on there, which I'm a big advocate of cryo, especially being a 43-year-old athlete that just abuses his body to no end on there. But before we get to that, was there any other side hustles before Cryofit? Like what's the progression before you get into cryo?
I was a paint contractor and did that forever. And I did that in Utah. I lived in Utah. I moved here August 2006. And when I moved here, you really didn't need like a license. So there was a lot of like 1099 paint contractors, and I wasn't used to that. And so I painted for a long time. Then I got into the fire service, got out of construction. But then when I started the entrepreneur stuff, I went back to painting, and it was like, man, I don't want to work this hard physically. You know what I mean?
Painting's hard, man.
Yeah, it was just tough. And I'm like a real big fan of the finished product. So that's why I like doing it. And I think it's cool. I like doing cabinetry and stuff like that. So I guess to answer your question, like before like a brick and mortar, like actual operation, it was just like word of mouth, side hustle, paint contracting.
So then you progress yourself into Cryofit, which for those that don't know, Cryofit is actually a franchise. The franchisor, the Cryofit headquarters is here in San Antonio.
Yes.
Jeff and Cheryl Reed are great people that do that. How did you, what made you think about a franchise? What was the attractiveness of a franchise just overall?
So I had no experience with like actually owning a business. And so I was kind of uncomfortable, like starting an official business by myself. And I tripped upon Cryofit pretty much by accident. I actually taught part-time at UT in the medical center. I taught the emergency health department for like San Antonio Fire Department's paramedic program.
Okay.
And I had students there in the fire academy, and they're actually recovering at Cryofit. And Cryofit was new, so they were looking for paramedics and nurses to start their IVs. And Cheryl had asked one of the cadets if they were interested, and they kind of explained, hey, we're just students. I don't even know how to do IVs and stuff, but I'll let you, I'll give you the contact info for this guy that I know that's really good at it. So long story short, she contacted me. I told her I wasn't interested because I was working 3 jobs, and she got me to come in there just to check it out. And I was like, man, I don't even know what this is. First time with like any sort of recovery or like regenerative health. And I ran through all their modalities. I thought they were cool. I worked the next weekend. I think I did like 10 or 15 IVs, and she was freaking out because I guess their last nurse had trouble like even starting an IV.
Which is like, awful when you're going to get one if they can't find it.
So like the entire time I'm working, she's like, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, why? And she's like, well, you're not saying anything. And I'm like, I mean, I'm just
doing my job.
And she's like, so you don't need anything? And I'm like, no, this is like the easiest thing in the world. And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm used to like being on a helicopter doing this, or in the back of an ambulance.
That's right. Bumping and jumping around and everything else.
Yeah. A bunch of like perfectly in shape people.
That's right. With good veins that are highly vascular to be able to find it.
I'm like, dude, this is a joke. And so I just started working more and more. It was like 2 times a month and 4 times a month. And then an existing cryotherapy store in San Antonio had contacted the Rays about potentially selling their business. So Cheryl had, she knew I was expressing interest in being a business owner. And so she contacted me and said, hey, this gentleman just let us know they want to sell their store. And if you want to check it out, feel free to. So I went and met that family, and I thought they were awesome. And we just kind of negotiated. That was my first time like negotiating an asset purchase.
There you go.
And I didn't even realize what I was actually doing.
Oh man, we could go down this rabbit hole all day long.
So it was crazy because
you're telling the guy that does a lot of asset, acquisition divestiture. Did you do it by yourself?
Oh yeah. And that's what I'm saying is like, I have a lot of like natural hustle in me. And so I'm like stupid, but smart. I can't even explain it. But looking back, that's what I'm saying is like, I'm like, dude, so I went through all of his, assets, and then I just divided it by 50%. And then I took another 20% off, and that was my starting point.
There you go.
And it worked. And so looking back, I'm like, dude, that was actually a really smart thing. You didn't even know what you were doing. So I purchased that asset from him, and then we just rebranded and took on the existing clientele. And we've been open 5 years. Actually, April 1st is our 5-year.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And right after we started, COVID hit. And so I was like, yeah, we're probably screwed. I don't know if this business thing is a good idea. We ended up working out. And so it was cool.
Especially for what it does. I mean, even for me, I feel that my immune system's a whole lot better.
Oh, for sure.
When I go, which I haven't been in a month.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like looking back on it, like COVID at the time, it was like the most terrible thing in the world for our business, because like, do I think that we are, I guess, considered like necessary, yes, I do. But let's be honest, like for most people, it's income that, you don't necessarily want to spend in the time of like a pandemic. And so I thought we were probably doomed, but to my point, it was actually the best thing ever for us, because it taught me how to budget better. And then it also like made the world a little bit more, I guess, knowledgeable about how important it is to kind of take care of yourself.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And we've just kind of seen like an influx of people that are putting their health a little bit more forward than before. So it was actually a good thing.
Well, and you have the benefit of great franchisors.
For sure. Absolutely.
The reality is a lot of franchises, we deal with franchises here. For a franchise, you're getting really two things. You're getting a brand.
Yep.
And you're getting a business model.
Yeah.
Which you got both.
Yes.
Most people, especially the ones that do it on their own, they get the brand.
Yeah.
But then they are it's a rude awakening on the actual business model that's replicated. And with Jeff and Cheryl and their experience and what they have, they're extremely smart people.
Yeah.
It's not surprising that they got it all figured out. But it's a shock to a lot of people. So you don't have that one. But let me ask you this: as a franchisee, right? Just in general, what is one of those things that surprised you that maybe you didn't think about ahead of time of, didn't really anticipate this, but
I think for me, it's a lot of it is understanding that nobody's going to help you. Just because you started a franchise doesn't mean they're going to hold your hand.
Sure.
And so it's 24/7, 365. There's a lot of unexpected phone calls. And they're just like small little, I guess, like holes to patch constantly.
Sure.
And so I think for that was just like learning how to balance that. And then also I own and operate it with my spouse. And so learning how to like balance your relationship.
We could have a whole show on that one too, man.
Yeah. Learning how to balance your relationship and home life as business partners, which we've done great at. And so I think that like initially I was I'm a very like attention to detail, and I'm a little bit like smothering in a sense when it comes to business.
At least you admit that.
And and so it was just adjusting to where I excel at and allowing her to excel in the areas that she does well at.
Well, and so to the first point, right? People that even get a good or great business model, right?
Yeah.
You still are an entrepreneur. Like they don't run the business for you, which is another misconception.
No.
Some people, they're like, well, I could just be an absentee. Like I just pay them the money and the thing generates the income. And it's like, no, you just don't have to figure out literally like the market. Like you basically get given the playbook, but you still got to go play the game.
Sure.
And you're going to take the hits and you're going to have to call an audible using the playbook. You get the playbook that has been proven, but you have to prove it.
Yeah.
So that's something. And then the second thing is, I mean, the spouse one's a difficult one, in dealing with it, but just doing business with a partner, a secondary person, right? That's a lot for people. And especially when they're family and, spouse and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, there's pros and cons, but it definitely is a challenge. But I've enjoyed it. And like you were saying, having good franchisors makes it a lot easier. But to your point, the bills are due no matter what. And
we've got good clients that pay you every single month.
Yeah.
Even though they don't come in every single, month, I'm lacking in my March. I'm going to catch back up.
I think it's a balance, give and take with memberships. Like that's what I try to explain to people. It's like, I appreciate it, but a lot of people, they don't realize like how much it costs to operate a business.
That's right.
And so they're just like, oh, I could get a tub of ice. I'm like, well, yeah, of course you can, like, and do that. Like it's
hey, I've done the tub of ice too. It hurts like hell.
Like it's
cryo. I always tell people, I'm like, man, you get into a cold plunge. I did that in college because we didn't have cryo or anything else. It hurt for about 5-6 minutes. Then when it all numb, at least with cryo, you get better benefits from it. It doesn't have the pain or anything else.
Yeah, I'm just a proponent of any kind of cold shock, but I love it.
Well, from moving from Cryofit, now and everybody can see your t-shirt here and the logo there is El Parlay. So you've got a great successful franchise continuing to grow. 5 years, businesses don't make it 2 years, 5 years. You're in the upper, decile of, being able to, as a small business, survive. I would say even on franchises too. So what was the impetus to get involved with El Parlay and to form that, since you had such a successful business with the Cryofit franchise?
Man, I love to gamble. I love to invest. And a guy that I went to Fire Academy with, we've maintained a really good friendship, and he's kind of an entrepreneur as well. And so we're always spitballing ideas, and I'm constantly throwing stuff his way, and he's virtually always telling me like, that's stupid or no. And it started out as a newsletter. Like, well, let's make like a newsletter. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Morning Brew,
Oh, yeah.
but something like that. But I was like, something a little more edgy, something more fun. And so we kind of like tossed around ideas for a couple months, and I do a lot of like fantasy sports, like betting, like on DraftKings and Prize Picks. And I've done it for years. And finally, about 3 years ago, I started getting really good at it. And so I won like a $50,000 tournament. It cost me $3 to enter.
It's pretty good ROI.
And then I won like three $10,000 tournaments 3 weeks in a row after that. And so I started paying for like subscriptions to like get better.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have these like quote unquote, betting pros that will give you advice, kind of like, stock twits,
Right.
for betting, sports betting. And I just realized like I'm paying this subscription fee essentially for their picks every day. And once you get into their Discord or their Patreon or whatever, you kind of realize like, all right, so these guys probably got like 10, 15,000 users that are giving them 30, $40 a month. They're placing 100, 200 bets per day. And then they're advertising the 1% that they win.
That's right.
As if they hit all the time.
That's right.
And so that was kind of when the trigger went off, and I pivoted to that idea. And so talked with my partner, and we have actually 2 partners now. I'll get into that later, but that's where we came up with the idea. It's in a firehouse that's kind of built on like trust and camaraderie and brotherhood. And I think the betting world and even like the investing world lacks a lot of transparency, and there's like a lot of snake oil. And so I was like, man, what if we can recreate this firehouse like in that world with our own application? And that's how it got started. And then the name, we just made probably 300-400 different names. And this is like, we literally have everything chronicled. So like I can show you a list of it. But
what was the worst name that somebody ever came up with? You don't have to say who did it, but what's the worst name?
Man, there was so many terrible ones. Like, and obviously, like we're partial to the name we like. Like, so you might think this name is terrible.
No, I think it's great.
For us, it was like, but yeah, it was just nonstop and just from friends and stuff. So I can't even think of one that's like absolutely terrible, but there was a lot. And I mean, I literally one day I'll show you the list of it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's how we came up with the idea. And then I kind of, made like a somewhat of a business plan. And then I kind of talked to you about, hey man, I want to form this. And that was probably July of 2023, I would say.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And then we met for coffee, and then you kind of explained to us what we're getting ourselves into. And then August is when y'all actually, made our corporation for us. And so it was awesome.
So tell the listeners here, what is El Parlay? Like, if you can encapsulate what El Parlay is, what's the quick elevator pitch on it?
So it is a blend of Robinhood, ESPN.com, and places like props.cash, combined in one. So essentially it's a community-based platform that gives a user a place to go where they can find in-depth analytics to increase their likelihood of placing a good bet. And so we provide statistics that are extremely hard to get with the use of like APIs, and it's all web application based. User logs in, gets on there, and we're actually in beta mode right now. And for example, tonight the Lakers are playing the Bucks, and Anthony Davis, I think his projected rebounds is 13.5. So we will show you on our application how often he's done that against the Bucks, how often he's done that in the last 10 games, last 5 games, last 20 games, home, away. And that helps you make a decision on whether or not you should go over or under that line. And we do that for all sports. So NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, UFC, and eventually we're even going to get into esports. And like I said, this is just a beta, but what we want is kind of the Barstool vibe as the brand, I guess. and then the product to be that Robinhood and ESPN that I mentioned combined. And so it's like a one-stop shop.
So when you say Robinhood, I mean, so am I getting stock information?
Eventually, yes. Live trading, options, all that. But we're focusing on sports right now.
Sure.
But
that's interesting because, I mean, you didn't say investing, you said betting, which
yes,
with Robinhood, that platform really is, it's a stock betting platform,
sure.
Is what it's turned into, as opposed to, an actual, stock investment
yes.
platform. So you guys will eventually, from an Parlay standpoint, look at the place for betting, whether it's stocks, whether it's sports, and maybe even beyond, to some of that stuff.
Yeah, we have a social feed similar to Twitter on the actual web application.
Oh, okay.
And then also you can private chat. There's groups, friends, all that sort of thing.
Wow.
And we're not after like Wall Street. We know that we're not going to appeal to, a lot of individuals that are on like TD Ameritrade, and we're after a specific age group that likes to have fun, and we want to educate them.
And they want an edge
kind of
too.
Our goal. And yeah, they do want an edge. And I kind of feel like stocks and sports betting go hand in hand, and that's why we kind of chose that. And it's just after we started, we realized like, one, this is super expensive. Development's extremely difficult.
Right.
And two, we have to have a viable product, and we have to perfect one thing before we can start adding on to that. And so right now that's our plan, and we're focusing on sports for the time being.
Which makes sense. And, I guess, what has it been in the last 5-6 years, the evolution of fantasy sports into being a bedrock for the expansion of sports betting has been huge.
Yes. So you got ESPN Bet.
Yeah. MGM Bet. And now, we'll have access to betting soon. That's why Mark Cuban's no longer the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, because it's inevitable, right? Betting, sure. Gambling is coming to Texas here in the next several years, if not, even more quicker than we think. What makes scratch that. Let me ask you this. So we're looking at, what are we, 8 months into the journey for El Parlay?
Yes.
We're here at Geekdom. Talk about what your company, you and your partners and the company have been through with regard to accessing resources here at Geekdom.
For sure. Geekdom has provided us kind of a giant index of mentorship and expert knowledge into progressing rapidly our corporation. So prior to you kept telling me, go to Geekdom, go to Geekdom, go to Geekdom. I was like, yeah, for sure. And I got a lot of stuff going on just like you do.
Right.
And we kind of were in not really a rut, but we're waiting on development. And so we didn't have a lot going on. And one day I was just like, man, I'm just going to drive there and see what's going on. It ended up being perfect because it was their last day for their first boot camp of the year. And we got in on the last day to register for it. And we registered for it. We attended the boot camp. And yes, we are like further in a sense of we've already formed a corporation. We already have something in development. It's not just an idea. A lot of people just had ideas in boot camp, because that's kind of what the boot camp is.
That's right. It's ideation.
But it's kind of like the Fire Academy, whereas like it's a rite of passage, and you got to go through certain hoops before you can get to the next phase. So we learned a lot from the boot camp, and then we just got done with the incubator. And so the incubator, it's just like what you're picturing in your head. You're putting your business is the infant inside of an incubator to keep it safe and bring it life. And that's exactly what they do to you. And so it's an 8-week course. And what they do is each week they focus on a different topic. It might be business one week. It might be marketing the next week. And they just help you improve in those areas. And it really spawns a lot of ideas, and you get to network with a lot of people, and it kind of puts you on the spot, and it forces you to get stuff done. And so The next phase is the pre-accelerator. And that's going to be a lot more like pitching and, hey, this is how you go to, the sharks or whatever you want to call it. Hey,
They're called investors.
Give me some money. This is how you do it professionally.
We call them sharks behind the scenes. They're investors when it's out in public.
Everyone thinks about Shark Tank, but that's the goal of it.
Well, and let me just kind of interject there. I mean, right now you guys have largely bootstrapped this too, correct? Mm-hmm. And I mean, for you, so your partners are all firefighters too, right?
Yes.
And how much technical skills for as far as coding and
none,
right? I mean,
no.
So I mean, this is this part of the show where I like to say, or having guests here, it's like, look, it takes ambition, a good idea, and then just resiliency to push through,
and a lot of
regardless of what your skill is, right? Because you can figure out how to hire those that have the skills that you don't.
Yes.
But you guys are at the point now where, again, doing your minimally viable product, your MVP, and going forward to the next round is going to be where you go from a beta to either one more expanded beta or even going live for that, right?
Yes.
Is that the kind of the
place you're on? So our beta is live right now, and we have 250 users. And so what we're doing is just stress testing that, and then we are just having them do surveys.
Now, can the people that are listening to this go to El Parlay right now and get in?
They can. They cannot get in.
Okay.
That actually. So I kind of take that back because initially when you got onto our website, you would see a sign-in screen, right? And so you type in your email, password, login, and then you would go. Well, one of the big differences between us and some of our competitors is we have live scores, and that's why I said like ESPN.com.
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, and I was like, man, if we're like ESPN, then why am I making a user log in before they see anything?
Sure.
And so that was an $8,000 fix. And it's almost done. I just have to look at it because we had to build a test website, and it's deployed on the test website. So now when a user logs in, once I actually deploy it onto our actual website, they will see something to the effect of ESPN.com.
Right.
But all those advanced analytics that I explained to you will be behind a paywall.
Which makes sense because ESPN, even now, they've got ESPN Plus, where the commentaries and some of the analysis and stuff, it's behind the paywall.
Yes.
To get there, it's part of it. So that makes complete sense.
Yeah. So anybody can go on there and they can register, and we have our beta, and those people get to use it for free. And once I deploy those changes that I just talked about, anybody can go on there and sign up. And then I'm just going to charge a really discounted fee for those advanced analytics. And so even if you're not a member, you'll still see live scores. You'll still see all of the lines for the games. But when you want those really in-depth statistics, you would have to pay $4.99 a month for that, which is nothing for most people.
Yeah, that's pretty easy.
It's pretty easy. So yeah.
So I asked you earlier about franchise, right? And what was the biggest aha? Like, oh, wow, I didn't anticipate that. What about El Parlay? What's been so far the biggest eye-opening? Ooh, I didn't see that one coming, for where you guys are.
All of it, but no, in all sincerity, it really is.
Yeah.
But I would say in order of I guess biggest pains, I think first would be development. Development's extremely difficult. It's very hard to find somebody that can put into I guess development what you're envisioning in your head. And it takes time, and there's a lot of delays, and we're used to, if you say you're going to be on time, then you're 15 minutes early.
Right.
Well, with development, if you say you're going to be on time, you're going to be a month late.
Right.
And that's been the hardest thing. And we're just always in a hurry. And so I guess for me, just learning that this is a marathon and not a sprint has been extremely difficult, but I feel like I'm getting better at it.
Well, and I mean, from a development standpoint, I've done development for companies that I've, been a part of, and You're right. You're speaking to someone. You're basically giving them your vision,
Yes.
and they have to transcribe that to paint it with code
and care about it.
Yes. Well, that's the second part of it too. But I'm sure, and you guys have experienced this too. When the code came back to you, you're like, that wasn't like, you use the wrong colors. Actually,
like every day.
Yeah, like we need to tweak this, and it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the reality is, good jobs, continue to remain in coding because of the lack of supply and the high demand for it. Coding costs a whole lot of money.
Absolutely.
I always tell people, you don't realize you pay coders probably more than you pay lawyers to some extent, especially for your company. And if you're paying your lawyers more than your coders and you're a tech company, give us a call. But yeah, it just is shocking. But you start to figure out how to better describe things, create better processes, and then screen, which I'm sure y'all have had to screen some people out and bring some new people in, right?
Well, we interviewed a lot of people. That's one thing that we've done a good job at is we're not entirely stupid. I just act like we are. But so, if anybody is looking for like development tips, I would just say, just don't get something overseas.
Offshoring can be very, very frustrating.
Yeah, obviously there's people with success stories that have done stuff offshore. It's just, if you're just getting into this and you don't know anybody, then that would be a bad idea.
Most people that are successful with offshore have someone with the tech skills that's part of the founder team.
For sure.
Because then they can transcribe and assign and delegate to what's a cheaper resource than what they could find in the United States. Non-development founders. Yeah. Offshore is it can be a bad idea. Onshore or near shore can be, difficult too, because of, again, it takes a lot of interviewing and those sort of experience, but offshoring for sure. Yeah. They say it's cheaper, but doesn't mean you get what you're supposed to get for that price.
No. Yeah, not at all. There's a lot of hangups with it, time zone, language barrier, the list goes on. And so I think for us, we haven't had to, fire any developers or anything like that, or find new ones. We've just had to learn how to communicate better with them, and then understand if he tells me, hey, it's going to be done, November 1st, at first, that's what I thought it was going to be done.
Right.
And so now if he tells me it's going to be done December 1st, then I'm automatically adding a month to that. And that's just being real.
Yeah.
And that's made my life way easier.
And as you get more capital in the bank that you can invest, you can bring that in-house, and then now the pace can increase as you bring that in-house, because then they're fully dedicated versus the partially or incremental that you're getting there. What else? What other big lessons so far have you guys experienced in this early stage?
Marketing is extremely difficult. There's a lot of different types of marketing, and you have a lot of competition, and you're trying to create a brand, and marketers can be tough to deal with as well. And so that's been difficult, but luckily we found somebody that's excellent at it. And so that we just wasted a little bit of our capital on a few different marketing companies, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But now we're in a good group with that. So that's been a little bit of an issue. But yeah, like I was saying, all of it's tough. It's just each day you just have to show up with a purpose and actually understand that, it's going to take countless time every single day on all three of the founders' parts for you to make progress. So yeah, it's been awesome.
How was pitching? Was that?
Man, for me, it's terrible.
I think for everybody, it's terrible at the beginning.
Yeah, for me, it's terrible. I can have like a sit down like this.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy, but getting in front of a stage, if I'm passionate about something, then I get super nervous. Like I can teach a class in front of like a group of 50 all day long because I have all that stuff memorized.
Right.
And not that I'm not like passionate about what I'm teaching, but it's not my true passion. It's not my true love. Sure. Like this is my true passion and I love it. And so to get on stage and try to explain that to like a group of people, I get super nervous personally. My two partners are like actually pretty good at it. And so,
Good.
yeah, that makes
That's
it a lot
helpful.
easier. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult when you're so passionate about something
Yeah.
to simplify it.
I think pitching, like for me too, is I'm a real big like proponent of like, I guess genuine. I feel like pitching's kind of cringy sometimes, and I don't like that.
Sure.
And I know like it's just, it is what it is. But I don't like when I feel like I'm being phony, like, oh, hey, come over to El Parlay. It's amazing.
You don't have to do that kind of pitch.
It's like, it's not sincere, but you see a lot of these pitches and it's like this crazy,
the infomercial like
yes.
style pitch. I'm not a fan of that one because that's what some people try to do, is be cutesy with it.
Oh, for sure.
And tell a story, which Alfred is been on the show with us. He's a dear friend, and that works for some of them, and it that's the way to do it. But yeah, I have a hard time with that myself.
Yeah, I'm just
matter of fact, let me tell you. But when you're passionate about it, it's like, I always tell people when you're pitching, it's kind of like if you've got kids and somebody says, well, tell me about your kids. Well, I mean, if you're all packed, well, this one plays soccer, this one runs track, this one's in this, this other one at the game. Like, you're going to go on and on and on versus their names are, A, B, and C, and they're 5'1". It's a very different style when you're so passionate. You want everybody to know
they want to feel,
and they just want to be like, I just need enough to know if you're going to hook me for the next conversation, which is what really a pitch is. Yeah,
and understanding that there's like all different types of pitches. Because when I first got into this, like, we are entirely new to the tech world.
Yep.
You're talking about like firefighters that are, just blue collar, getting into the tech world is a shocker. And so understanding that there's a ton of different pitches. You might have a pitch that you email. You might have a pitch that you present in a coffee shop. You might have a pitch that you present at a conference. And so there's a lot to it, and you just have to have something to be able to show for each one of those scenarios.
Well, and when you guys look back, and I know you said you keep like the names and everything else, keep the pitch decks, because as you progress, just in the maturity of your knowledge, I mean, you're in the school of hard knocks now when it comes to these startups. It's pretty tough. You'll go back and edit. And when you go back and look at the very first one you did, you'll be like, oh, wow. It's kind of like going back and look at the very first podcast we did, which was a great podcast. Yeah. But, we've just improved and learned things and gotten it better. It's the same thing with your pitch.
Yeah. You just got to be consistent and just keep doing it. And then you'll see the, I guess, fruitions of your work,
So overall in your, hustle, mentality that's there, what do you think is something that, like, for an aspiring young, let's say student or just young, person that's out there, what do you think is what would be some words of wisdom for them with regard to, starting a side hustle? Because that's where almost all small businesses and startups start off, as a side hustle. Do you have any words or thoughts for them?
Yeah. I mean, anybody can do it. And I feel like, my generation, I guess I'm considered a millennial, but I'm right on that cusp because I was born in 84.
Oh.
And so I kind of have like a blend of.
You're a millennial. I'm an 80s baby.
Yeah.
I'm on the cusp. You're a millennial.
Well, yeah, but it was like, I still got spanked.
That's true.
You could still spank in school. The internet started.
I got spanked all the time.
Internet started in 6th grade for me. And so there's a lot of people older than me that feel as if like the younger generation is, they're lazy or they're stupid, but I feel like they, work smarter, not harder type. And so I think for like a younger individual that's looking to get into entrepreneurship, there's still a lot of wisdom in older people. And for me, it's just explaining to young people that you're a product of your environment. And so just to pay attention to the people that you're surrounding yourself around, and always try to surround yourself around people that have either done better than you or are currently doing something that you're aspiring to do. And I think if you do that and you just show up each day, then you're forced to learn. And all of that experience that you have from school and all that stuff, it just kind of comes into I guess where you're your own person and you start kind of spreading your wings and doing what you want to do. So yeah, just showing up each day, surrounding yourself by people that are doing better than you, and just be humble. Yeah.
So a thought came to mind when you were just saying this too. So I think this generation that, the young, they see the 1%, right? Kind of like what you were just saying is, the competitors that were out there, they were taking all that money, making the bets, but only advertising and showing off the 1%. They were losing 99%, but they would just tell them about the one. Everybody goes, oh, let me do more. But that's what I think this generation looks at is the 1%. They don't realize that you lose 99% of the time, especially as a entrepreneur. Now, I'm not saying major losses, right? It's not the end of the war, right? Which is your company, but every single day, right? You talked about holes, you talked about issues, right? Those are little, you can call them losses, right? They can be small, they can be medium, but it's the resiliency to overcome those losses. Trying to get to the 1% that I think's missing.
Yeah,
from a lot of the young.
I kind of look at it as like it's all tuition, and so all of my losses, like I feel like that's me paying tuition. And it's all education, and so I don't really look at anything as like a true loss, right? Like I literally lose every day, but it's like just paid tuition, and I just try to learn from every single thing that we do wrong, and even the stuff that we do right, and that's kind of my motto with it.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
So for those that are listening, be willing to pay the tuition because there's a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not money, it's time. It may be money.
Yeah, and like
have to do, but there's a lot.
Yeah. And I feel like social media it's hard because you look on social media and everybody's like, oh, I make $500 a day selling this product from my couch. It's so easy, click here and learn how.
So easy for the guy that's spending $1 million to make $1 million, off of that.
Yeah. So if you're young, I mean, it's like, well, shoot, why don't I just do that? And then you try to do all those things, and like success just takes time no matter what. Of course, you're going to have like your success stories where they got lucky and they came up, from something. They were in the right place at the right time. But for the most part, I've just like learned over time that success just takes a long time. And success is also like subjective to the person. Is it happiness? Is it finances? Like, what is success? Right. And so you got to decide like what's important to you and find that happy medium.
Oh, that's great. Eli, I know for you and for El Parlay and for Cryofit, the success will just continue. And I really thank you for, coming here and talking to us. And we look forward to you coming back and telling us more. Again, I mean, this is the journey that's early on that, almost every single company has to go through. It can be a short period of time, can be a longer period of time, but every company goes through that beginning stage. And it's been great for you to share. And thank you for sharing with us the beginning stage, but there's so much more to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. And look forward to coming back and I guess sharing the rest of our war stories with you.
That sounds great. I hope you enjoyed our episode today as much as I did. Learning about side hustles and entrepreneurism in the early stages is something that all of us as entrepreneurs go through. And I'm sure many of those stories that you can relate to either now or in the past and early on in your entrepreneurial journey. As always, we are here to educate, support, and advise every single small and medium business and startup in the state of Texas. And we do these to make sure that we can add value to you. If you could, click on subscribe to whichever platform you're watching us on, leave us a comment, and let us know if we're adding value. And until next time, we'll see you then.